600 to 800 milligrams of tren.
Damn. We can see typically what he was doing. I have the autopsy pulled up. So I really need you guys to understand that. What's good, guys? Diagofit here, Diagofit.com for coaching. Today we're breaking down Rich Piana, some of his craziest cycles he's taken in the past, or he used to take back when he was alive, the cause of his tragic passing, along with reacting to a video of him actually breaking down how he packed on 48 pounds of mass in a single year. We're going to be breaking all this down in this video, so stick around if you want to hear more about this. We have to start out with who he was. Who was Rich Piana? So this dude was one of the OGs, one of the legends in this whole industry that is the fitness industry nowadays. The whole bodybuilding game in general. He was known for his freakish size. He was absolutely fucking insane. A lot of that shit was just artificial oil that was pumped into his muscles, but still he was absolutely insane when it came to his size, when it came to his look, when it came to the females that he got. He overall went to the extremes with everything he did. And that's how he got his name coined in the industry. That's why he was such a fucking legend. A lot of people looked up to him, myself included. His motto was do whatever it takes to reach your fucking goals. And that's exactly what he did. However, doing whatever it takes sometimes can lead you into an early grave, which we're going to break down a little later in the video. However, this guy competed when he was young. He started gear at a very young age. He was born in 1970. He started lifting at the age of 11 and he started competing at 15. He won his first show at 15 years old. He won a bunch of titles like Mr. Teen 1989, Mr. California 1998. He also placed in a bunch of NPC shows. He never actually went pro, but still his physique spoke for itself. Okay, and everyone knows him for the fucking very transparent person that he was. Okay, just do whatever it takes. He was open about everything that he did, gear included. So where I want to start this out is how he packed on 48 pounds of mass in a single year. We're going to break this down, react to his video, craziest steroid cycle in 1 year, put on 48 pounds of mass. So let's break this down. Let me react to this video. Rich Piana 5%. Okay, his brand was 5% of people that are going to do whatever it takes, by the way. Okay. Oh, the man, the myth, the legend.
I'm going to talk about the craziest regimen I've ever done in my life. Basically, it was between the time I won the California overall to the time I was competing in the USAs and I placed 7th.
So he was competing in the USAs, trying to get that pro card.
I put on approximately 48 pounds of muscle. I weighed 231 on stage at the California.
Okay, I want to break this down for a second for people that don't understand this, okay? 48 pounds of mass in a single year, especially already being big, is absolutely fucking insane. The difference that 48 pounds of muscle makes to a frame, to a physique, is game-changing. It's a dramatic before and after physique transformation. So let me just show you guys this here. This is 50 pounds of lean muscle gain. Like I said, this is a dramatic, game-changing amount of muscle to the point where you will literally change the way that you're perceived, the way you look. 50 pounds of muscle is a lot of fucking muscle, especially if you're already big. This is going to make a huge difference when it comes to your physique, your presence, your overall mass. And he packed this shit in a single year. Now, to give you a quick rundown on data and stats in the past on what you should expect to gain muscle-wise in a single year. If you're natural, you could gain anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds of lean mass, especially when you first start out. Okay, when you first start out, this is actually very common to be expected. Okay, you're not enhanced at all, not taking anything, no hormones, no support compounds, no PEDs. 10 to 20 pounds is very realistic. Now, if you are enhanced, you can easily gain 15 to 30 plus pounds depending on your genetics, depending on what you're doing, your diet, your training protocol. That's a common amount of mass to gain in a year. Now, I've helped my clients gain a lot more quick with proper diet, with proper training that works synergistically with their cycle. However, with Rich specifically, this dude packed on 50 pounds of muscle, to be exact, 48 pounds in a single year while already having a crazy amount of mass on his frame. You guys have to understand how crazy that statement actually is and who come into fruition. This is a crazy ass amount of weight and muscle. Okay, this is not just weight on a scale. This is pure lean mass. This is absolutely fucking insane. You have to understand how crazy that statement actually is.
I believe it was 287 at the USAs on stage.
So 231 to 287, and that's on stage. That's the leanest that he possibly could get. When you're on stage, you're going to be the leanest that you possibly can. It's the whole point of hopping on stage. You're trying to shred down all that body fat and water off your fucking frame. So that's a really good metric to look at in terms of the lean mass that you're gaining. There, of course, is still going to be some sort of fat and water on your frame, but very minimal on stage. So 237 to 281 or whatever the fuck you said, that's insane, bro.
In that bad of shape. But it was just an incredible amount of size that I had put on, and
he's going to break down the cycle he took to get this.
As far as winning that show, everything I did from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed was about winning that contest. Obviously, I didn't win. I got 7th. And that was kind of what my fire burned out after that show, because I had put so much into it and did everything I could. But Let's cut to the chase here. Basically,
so you can see what he said as well. This is a point that you have to understand too. When it comes to hopping on stage, this is a completely different game. That isn't just about your work ethic. It's also about your genetics. What were you given in terms of your physique structure, your aesthetics, your proportions? A lot of that goes into judging. There's a lot you can do to better yourself to win, especially early on at NPC shows, okay? When you're just hopping in with true novice, with people that are brand new to the shit. Even in open, when you're new, it's easy to quickly progress. It's still a difficult game, but a lot of it comes down to genetics. You see what he just said. The fire burned out because he put all this into it. He gained 48 pounds of muscle in a single year, pushing an insane cycle, which we're going to break down in a second, and he still only got 7th, okay? He probably dumped a shit ton of money into the cycle, into his diet, into his training. This is a full-time job. If you're trying to become pro or you're trying to gain the Mr. Olympia title, okay, it's a full-time job. You do not prioritize anything else. You might have a side job to just put a roof over your head, but you're prioritizing this over anything else. You're not focusing on family. You're not focusing on progression with your business, with your job, with climbing the corporate ladder. You're focusing on your physique and your physique only. And the fact that he did this and he still only got 7th just proves the fact that it comes down to genetics. This game is not for everybody when it comes to bodybuilding. You don't necessarily have to hop on stage to get a crazy physique, like point proven here with Rich Piana, okay? He still had a crazy physique. He wasn't competing later on in his days, but still, the game isn't for everybody.
Was eating 12 solid meals a day.
Jesus Christ, 12 solid meals.
Hour and a half to 2 hours.
Like I mentioned, 12 solid meals a day. Every 1.5 hours, this dude was downing food. That's insane. Back when I was bulking, even my clients, the max we're eating is 8 meals a day, and this is very difficult to do. A lot of force feeding is being done. It's not fun. It's not fun when you have to bulk to get a freakish amount of size. That's a full-time job in itself. So the fact he was eating 12 meals a day, that's fucking insane. But he did whatever it takes. Point proven. He landed in the grave early. We'll break it down, but still, he did whatever it takes.
2 chicken breasts, 8 egg whites, and 2 to 3 cups of rice per meal, eating that 12 times a day.
Jesus.
I was training twice a day. I was doing cardio twice a day. And when I wasn't training or doing cardio, I was taking a nap. I would sleep.
So full-time position here. Okay.
1 to 3 hours each time. That's what I did because I felt that was the best possible scenario to put on the most amount of muscle humanly possible, was to break up my sleep so I could eat more, train more, do more cardio. Drug-wise, I was taking 2 IUs of growth every hour and a half to 2 hours. So this was...
Holy fuck. So now he's breaking down his PED stack. 2 IUs of growth every hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's an insane amount of growth hormone. But if you're trying to gain 50 pounds of lean mass in a single year, you're going to have to take this shit. Now, I'm not sure if he took insulin aside this. It's very common to see very competitive pro level athletes take insulin alongside growth, especially at this dose. For therapeutic dosing, when it comes to growth, you typically would take anywhere from 2 to 4 IU a day. This dude was taking 1 to 2 IU every fucking hour, bro. So this tells you a little bit something about who this guy was.
15 years ago, remember. So this was back 15 years ago, and this is how ahead of time I was taking growth every hour and a half to 2 hours throughout the day, and tried to take it on an empty stomach. It's kind of hard when you eat 12 times a day. But I was taking, approximately 20 IUs of growth a day.
Now, the reason he said that when it comes to taking growth on an empty stomach is because of the fat burning effects. When you're trying to prep for a contest, it's very nice and ideal to take growth on an empty stomach, especially pre-cardio, pre-training, on an empty stomach. So you get those additional fat burning effects from the growth. That's just an added pro. Growth gets so technical when it comes to the timing that you're going to take it out. You can take it on an empty stomach right when you wake up, pre-workout. You can take it post-workout right before bed. Okay, even though you get that GH production primarily when you're asleep, you still take it pre-bed. There's a lot of different times you can take this shit at to get optimal effects. It gets very technical the deeper you go into this game, but that's why he said that statement.
As far as my steroid cycle,
here we go with the cycle.
Then, I was taking 2 grams of test, probably 600 to 800 milligrams of trin, probably 600 milligrams of equipoise. I was taking 300 milligrams of injectable anadrol a week, and the 20 IUs of growth. And for me, that's probably the craziest I've gotten. And
damn. Okay, so that was the cycle. He just broke down his cycle to get 48 pounds of mass in a single year. So taking a couple grams of test. Let's replay this. So a couple grams of test, very common, believe it or not. Now I know that I say this a lot when it comes to new people hopping on testosterone, beginners, taking anywhere from 250 to 300 milligrams of test only just to see how it's going to react in your system. This is a very standard SOP and procedure to deploy when you're brand new to gear, because you want to see how the test is going to react in your system. Now, this is 250 to 300 milligrams. Now, when you take 1,000 milligrams, that is equivalent to 1 gram of test. So he was taking 2,000 milligrams a week. And when you're brand new, you should be taking 250 to 300. If you're on TRT, therapeutic replacement for tests, you're taking anywhere from 100 to 200 milligrams max a week. So this gives you an understanding of the crazy high dose this is. Now, believe it or not, though, this is actually a very common dose when it comes to pros. And a lot of pros take more than this, 3, 4, 5 grams of test a week. It's very common the deeper you get into this game, especially now in heading into 2026 here. It's 2026 as I'm filming this, for pros to be taking a lot of shit. This is how the game is progressing. It used to be you take a very low amount of tests, you take a very low amount of Deca, D-ball, fucking Anadrol, whatever the fuck, Parabolin back in the day. And it just has progressively gotten crazier because the physiques have gotten crazier. If you look back in time at the prehistoric bodybuilders, in nowadays standards, they didn't even look like they had a solid physique at all. They barely looked like they trained. But as time has progressed, the standards have gotten so fucking insane that people are just taking so high doses, crazy doses when it comes to their cycles. It's absolutely not necessary. But for today's standard, when it comes to open, when it comes to the Derek Lunsford, C-bum type physique, you absolutely have to be taking a lot of gear, unless you're a hyper responder to the compounds in general. Then you can get away with taking a lot less gear, but you're still going to run into the same side, just at a lower dose. That's what a hyper responder is. They're more sensitive to the compounds in terms of pros, but also cons. So dosing is pretty much irrelevant when it comes to nowadays and how genetically you react to this shit. But anyways, 2 grams of test.
Then I was taking 2 grams of test, probably 600 to 800 milligrams of tren.
600 to 800 milligrams of tren. That's crazy. I've taken a gram of tren ace in the past, and I've taken like 800 milligrams a week of tren e in the past. It's very toxic. And at that point, you're basically telling yourself, I'm going to run into every side in the book, and you're prepared for that shit. You're prepared for the sides. Tren is one of the most toxic compounds you can take. 600 to 800 milligrams of tren. Now, he said he packed it on in a year. I don't know if he was pushing this amount of gear for the whole year, or if he was periodically taking it, cruising off. I don't know. It sounds like he took it for the whole fucking year, which is absolutely insane to be on that high of a dose of tren for a whole calendar year. That's insane. For a normal person, when you're brand new to this shit, you take probably anywhere from 50 to 200 milligrams of tren ace at the max per week. And that's once you're really deep into this game, you're past the point of taking mild compounds of standard compounds that come at low sides, and you've earned the right to take tren. Max, you'd push 500 milligrams of ace, unless you're doing some type of weird fucking experiment like I was doing with myself, taking a gram. But still, that's a lot of tren, okay? And again, very toxic.
Probably 600 milligrams of equipoise.
600 milligrams of equipoise, pretty standard actually. So nowadays, very common to see, especially pros, take a gram, do 1.5 grams of this shit on top of their test. It sounds like here he was packing size, obviously 48 pounds of mass in a year. So he's trying to eat as much as possible. He's trying to gain as much muscle in the off season. When he shreds down and he hops on that shred stack for stage, he's gonna have a insane amount of muscle curl he's packed on in the off season, and now he's just showing it off during that peak look on stage. So EQ is a great support compound when it comes to eating. How to eat 12 times a day. EQ absolutely aided him with doing that shit. It's going to increase hunger stimulation, increase your RBC hematocrit hemoglobin, so that cardio's on point. He's doing 2 hours of cardio a day. It's going to aid with that too. Okay, so this makes a lot of sense on why he would deploy this.
I was taking 300 milligrams of injectable Anadrol a week.
Okay, 300 mgs inject Anadrol a week. Believe it or not, that's not that high of a dose, but inject Anadrol comes with massive PIP, post-injection pain. Now, typically Anadrol is going to be an oral compound. So the majority of Anadrol you'll see on the market is going to be oral. The Anadrol you take, typically going to be oral. If you've taken it in the past, you've probably taken oral. Okay, if you're taking 300 milligrams a week of Anadrol, it's actually pretty low dose, but obviously it's going to come with liver toxicity. This will come with massive liver toxicity. The more you push it, it's a heavy oral when it comes to hitting your liver, when it comes to increasing your liver enzymes. It will absolutely boost these up. And if you take this for a prolonged period of time, you can run into liver damage. And I can almost guarantee you that he was taking a lot of aromatase inhibitors. He's probably taking a lot of support compounds that had to get digested through the liver. He's not trying to stress it out even more than it already is. So he moved to inject injectable, which will completely bypass the liver. It's not going to stress your liver the way oral would, but you're going to run into massive PIP. It's a very common side you run into taking injectable orals. It's just, you're going to run into it. I've taken every injectable oral there is. It hurts like a bitch. Whatever you're taking, it's going to be the same. Okay, whenever you pin that shit, you should expect either a lump, massive bruising, or just massive soreness for days after you pin that shit. And when it comes to orals, both, when it comes to oral or injectable, it's fast acting. You're going to have to pin it very frequently. It's why a lot of people choose to just take the oral version. It's a lot easier, but it comes with that liver stress.
And the 20 IUs of growth.
And the 20 IUs of growth. So the 20 IU of growth is probably the craziest statement here. Believe it or not, this is a massive amount of growth hormone. And this is probably what aided him. I would say 50% of his whole muscle accrual is probably from that growth alone, if not 60%. So 20 IUs of growth is an extreme dosage with this shit, okay? That is an Olympia caliber growth dosage. Now, if you're taking growth alongside insulin, you can definitely get away with taking this high of a dose. But if you just take the 20 IUs of growth without the insulin, okay, you're running into massive risk. And even this alone, I would say this is more toxic than the fucking tren, believe it or not. When it comes to a mental standpoint, the tren is going to be the worst compound you can take. Okay, that alone can cause people to hop off tren prematurely, even at a low dose. But when it comes to the growth at 20 IUs, massive insulin resistance. This is why a lot of people have to take insulin alongside their growth when they start pushing up the dose. High blood sugar, significantly elevated risk of type 2 diabetes. This is why a lot of people, again, have to take insulin alongside a high dose of growth. It's so not worth taking this high of a dose, but you will see at the Olympia level, you'll see people take 10, 20, even 25, 30 IU of growth very commonly, okay? Because growth stacked alongside insulin is your surefire way, if you're dialed with your diet and training, to get a freakish amount of size. The Ronnie Colemans, the fucking Jay Cutlers, the C-Bums, the Derek Lunsfords, the Samson Dowdas, when you see these people with freakish amounts of size, you can almost guarantee that they're taking a high dose of growth alongside Slin to achieve that shit. There really isn't another way to do it. You have to pump not only a cycle, but that growth. That growth is almost mandatory at that level. But still, it's crazy. This brings me to my next point here. When you take this high of a dose of growth, growth is the leading factor when it comes to an enlarged heart, when it comes to enlarged organs, enlarge everything. When it comes to your bones, your tissue, increased facial features. When it comes to like your nose, your ears, your head even is going to grow, your bones. Overall, you're just going to get bigger. You're going to grow. That's what growth hormone does. It helps you fucking grow. But even in the areas you don't want, okay, if you're just trying to look for muscle accrual, you have to understand taking a high dose of growth will increase your foot size. It's going to increase everything. So you're not just gaining muscle, you're gaining size everywhere physically, but also internally when it comes to your organs and your heart. And this was a huge leading factor to his demise, which we're going to break down in a second here. But when it comes to that enlarged heart, okay, this also can cause high BP, high resting heart rate when it comes to heart disease, increased risk of heart failure, premature death, as we have seen with Rich here. There's a lot more other things like cancer risk, also like gyno, but that's very minor compared to what I just mentioned, because the cancer is something that can come in later on down the road. But when it comes to an enlarged heart, when it comes to enlarged organs, this shit can cause you to croak way too soon, especially if you're overdoing this shit to the max. Now, this was his blast.
The amount of muscle I put on my body was insane. And that was the time where I noticed I had a little bit of stomach growth going on. When I looked at the pictures from the Cal to the USA, you know, my belly button had became herniated, and I noticed my stomach kept protruding a little bit in 1 year.
It's called palumboism. That's why a lot of people, a lot of open competitors you see on stage, they have protruding guts, protruding stomachs to the point where it looks like some of them are fucking pregnant. It's because of the growth. And the term palumboism got coined by Dave Palumbo, who was the first to visibly notice this in a very protruding manner. So he coined that fucking term. It's when bodybuilders have that protruding guts. Very common, especially on growth. You'll see Joe Rogan have this shit. A lot of people have it, especially over doing growth.
What am I doing? What am I doing? I'm just, doing crazy shit to try to win this contest, and I didn't even win. I got 7th place. I didn't even get a trophy, and I probably honestly, I probably spent about 15 grand, on that contest, and I had nothing to show for it, nothing.
$15,000.
So that was kind of an eye opener for me that maybe this bodybuilding thing ain't all what it's cut out to be. I started
$15,000 on the cycle. That's another thing. When you're taking this high of a dose of growth, this fucking compound right here, when you're taking this high of a dose of this shit, it's going to be expensive. Kits of growth can range anywhere from $150 to $1,000 depending on where you're getting them. So just to put this into perspective here, one of these vials of growth is typically 10 IU. So if you're taking 20 IU of growth, that That means that you are pumping 2 of these full vials into your system every day, 2 complete vials, okay? And normally comes with 10 vials. So you're running through your kit in 5 days. That's going to be $150 to $1,000 completely burned every 5 days. So that's another thing that you really have to keep in mind when you're taking growth hormone. It is definitely a pricey compound if you're taking a lot of it. If you're taking therapeutic doses, it's doable. But if you're taking a high dose like Rich, it's going to be expensive. The cycle itself is definitely a very high dose, so you need to factor that into it, but growth is going to be the main driving factor of budget loss here. Now, let's break down another cycle that he ran here. This is a cycle that I found that he noted down. Okay, so that was his craziest cycle to gain 48 pounds of mass, but we can see typically what he was doing on and off, not just that time. That was the craziest time for him. It sounded like he took that shit year round. This is another blast. So week 1, this is how everyone used to note this shit down, by the way, back in the day. So this is very common. It might look like fucking hieroglyphics. Regardless, week 1, he was taking test D, deca, mass P. Week 2, he was taking 3/4 test D, 3/4 deca, mass P. So test, deca, mass is not a combo that I would take nowadays, at least. Now, I'm not saying he should have changed the fucking cycle and he would have gotten better results. I'm not saying that at all. Look at his physique. It speaks for itself. This obviously worked for him massively. The cycles that he ran synergistically with his diet and training protocol. So I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that depending on his goals, he probably reacted very well to the combo of test and mass, even though deca specifically you take nandrolone in an off-season context and mass you take that shit during a prep or shred context. Taking them together, you're counterproductive because you have 2 separate compounds with 2 separate primary use cases sort of fighting each other. But if he's reacting well to the compounds like deca, for example, and nandrolone for the joint lubrication benefits or for the increased muscle accrual, whatever the fuck it is, this strength boost on top of the mass, which is going to lean him out, also can have those AI type properties to reduce estrogen, it definitely could work in his favor, right? This isn't something I would do now, but obviously it worked for him back in the day. Now we can see week 4, it was the same. Okay. And then he started growth at Serostim, which is a very common brand that you'll get for growth, 4.5 IU every day. Same. So he was taking test, deca, mass on top of growth. Then week 5, he definitely was adjusting this shit very frequently, which is common at the pro level, right? You can see same. Okay. He was taking 3cc now at test. It's a lot of fucking tests, so on and so forth. We can see what he's doing here. Now weeks 13, so on and so forth, same. Now he adds primo and he switches over to test prop ester. So now it's looking like he's probably going to shred down a bit. He's tapering the anadrol, replacing with anavar. So now he has packed the size because he's taken anadrol, deca, growth, test. These are all bulking agents. And now he's separating them out with typical shredding agents when it comes to primo to get that taper, and also var, of course. So you can see the type of blast this dude was running. Now, this is a lot of gear. It's a lot of fucking gear, but it's common to see nowadays when it comes to the pro level. You have to understand that this amount of gear, though, is not something to fuck around with. This will absolutely take years off your life. The more consistent you're doing this for a prolonged period of time, you will absolutely take a lot of years off your life. The higher the doses you're taking, the longer you are exposed, the more risk you are of sides of a long-term damage, of the long-term risk, not just the short-term, not just the gyno, the hair loss, the acne, the long-term risk, the cardiovascular risk, the heart attack, stroke, blood clots, the enlarged heart, the fucking brain aneurysms. That's when you're at risk of that shit. And he was primed and poised to run into these massive fucking damaging effects, which he did, which I'm going to break down now. So we can see here, unfortunately, Rich ended up passing way too fucking soon. 46 years old. He ended up passing on August 25th, 2017. I have the autopsy pulled up in front of me here. So now this is very unfortunate that I'm even fucking reading this shit. Yeah, I looked up to Rich Piana massively, as a lot of other people did, but we can learn off this. We can learn off what happened here. So he was getting a haircut, I think in Florida, wherever he was. Okay, and he ended up just passing out, going into a coma, ended up croaking early. Now let's see what happened here in the autopsy. Cardiomegaly, 670 grams is what his heart weighed with mild coronary atherosclerosis. So when it comes to an enlarged heart, like I just mentioned with growth, especially taking a lot of it, you're going to get an enlarged heart. So that was a leading driving factor with this. We can almost guarantee that when it comes to that heart enlargement. Not just that, but the trend and everything else he was taking. The more you're exposed to, especially high dose trend, high dose test for a long fucking time, you're going to get cardiomegaly. You're going to get an enlarged heart. Your blood pressure is going to go through the fucking roof. 24/7, you're naturally going to have higher blood pressure, especially taking a high dose of growth alongside a high dose of trend. Increased risk of heart disease. All this shit comes with these high doses of gear that he was taking, even deca, even nandrolone. Whatever you're taking, if it's a super physiological amount of a hormone, this is a common side if you're exposed for too long. We can see he also ran to this other shit. Bronchopneumonia, situs, brain with edema, necrosis, yellowish discoloration of the skin, no recent significant injuries, no hospital admission. Okay, so the brain with edema is very common. You're going to get brain problems. Believe it or not, it affects your fucking brain too. It can absolutely fuck with a lot of things. Now, when we're looking at the brain edema, so this is also linked directly with the high dose of growth. So like I said, high blood pressure, this shit can cause massive hypertension alongside the high dose trend. So you definitely can have some edema risk with your brain. Now, when it comes to yellowish discoloration, that's very common when it comes to liver damage, especially when you're taking a bunch of orals, if you're taking a lot of support compounds, whether that's AI or whether that's a dopamine agonist, anything orally that you're taking, if you're taking it over a long period of time, you're damaging your liver. And especially if you're taking an oral only stack, you're going to fuck up your liver a lot quicker than someone who's taking an injectable based cycle. So yellowish discoloration of the skin or jaundice, very common when it comes to liver damage. Someone whose liver enzymes have been elevated for way too long, they're getting liver damage, their liver is actively being destroyed in front of them, and it's showing physically when it comes to that yellowish discoloration. So as we go through here with the autopsy, when we scroll down here to the cardiovascular system, this is something I really wanted to look into. So the 670 gram heart. So with normal people, when it comes to naturals or when it comes to normal males, females, the normal weight you're going to see in a healthy male is going to be anywhere from 280 to 340 grams when it comes to their heart weight. When it comes to a female, often 230 to 280 grams max. That's in a healthy male or female. Now we look at Rich. Okay, 670 grams is what his heart weighed. That is pretty much double, exactly double of the max weight that a healthy male should have. So this goes to show you the effects of that prolonged use, of that prolonged growth abuse at the highest fucking level. This is what that did to his heart. It made it double the size of a normal healthy human's heart. So this is very not good. The coronary arteries were normally developed, had mild atherosclerosis disease, myocardial cut surfaces had no fibrosis, infarctions and focal lesions. The chambers were not dilated. The atrial and ventricle septae were intact. Heart was enlarged with myocardium of the left ventricle and the right ventricle hypertrophied. So also left ventricle and right ventricle hypertrophy, very common, specifically left ventricle hypertrophy, very common with prolonged gear use. That's another leading cause to early fatalities in bodybuilders. Capillary muscles and chordae tendineae were thickened, very common too when it comes to all this shit. The endocardium and heart valves are not fibrosed. They had mild atherosclerosis. The major arteries and great veins showed normal distribution. So we can see that his heart was massively enlarged. He had left ventricular hypertrophy. This is not good. All of these sides and what we're seeing here noted down on this autopsy are exactly correspondent with someone who is at massive risk of this problem, okay, of running into a massive cardiovascular catastrophe later on in life, and unfortunately happened to him. So I really need you guys to understand that this is not a game when it comes to gear use. This is not a game, and Rich Piana is showing that shit point blank to us. Now, obviously this sucks, but we can use this negative as a positive, learn from this shit. Make sure you're getting your labs done. Make sure you're getting your heart scans done, not just heart scan, your EKG, echo. Make sure you're on top of your blood pressure at all times, even your resting heart rate. You need to make sure all this is lined up prior to hopping on and during, when the compounds are peaked in your system, when you're having the worst fucking sides during that peak mid blast. That's why you need to get your bloods done pre, mid, and post blast. You want to have an overview of your body when the compounds are peaked, when all the sides are at its worst, when the damage, the fucking risk is at its worst, okay, at least short term. You want to make sure everything is fucking dialed in. If you're not doing this, you are gambling with your health. And I believe Rich Piana is definitely on top of this, but he chose to ignore the warning signs. You can't ignore the red flags. When you're looking at your labs, if something's off, you get that shit in range. When you're looking at your EKG or echo, if something's off, you figure out what the fuck is happening and you get it back in range. Or if something is permanently fucked, if you have a heart deformation or if you have some type of genetic heart disease or condition, just know that you probably shouldn't be taking this shit. You probably shouldn't take that fucking risk. And because these compounds will fuck with your heart, these compounds will absolutely fuck with your cardiovascular system the more you take them. So you need to understand how your body's working. Everyone's different. Every individual will have different genetics, will have different genetic predispositions, will have specific conditions, will have specific sensitivities to parts of their labs. You need to figure out what applies to you and get it in range if you're going to go down this fucking route, bro. Because if you don't, you are gambling. And we all know how that ends up. People that don't give a fuck about their health do land in a grave a lot earlier than those who do. So that's my 2 cents on Rich. Rest in peace, absolute legend. I hope that we can live on this dude's legacy as deep as possible, because he really did make a tremendous difference in this industry. He's very transparent. I love that about him. Okay, there was no lies when it came to Rich. He was very open about everything in his life, and that is very respectable, very commendable, and I hope that the industry moves forward in that direction. So with that being said, make sure to like and subscribe, comment what you want me to make a vid on next, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.